Hello, hello. Happy Monday. And I also just want to take time to say happy Thanksgiving to my lovely Canadian listeners. Today is Thanksgiving for us. Okay, so this one is really an off the script moment because I really wanted to share this episode as I'm navigating this currently and more recently. And I figured, it's such a great topic to really understand more about, which is if you're navigating things for the first time. And I want to bring this topic up because I feel like a lot of the time we think that when we do something for a long period of time, we build resilience, we build understanding, we build our knowledge, and we build our experience with it. And that builds confidence, right? And I feel like a lot of the time, whenever there's something new, challenging, or different, we tend to get in our heads and we can really, flip the script and be like, what the heck? I feel so new at this and I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And then that can easily make us fall into imposter syndrome and essentially believing that we might not be good enough. And, like really thinking about like, oh, like I did this wrong and therefore I'm bad at it and I can't do it and all of those kinds of stories. So this one is more of a story time because I have been more recently in a transition period for myself where I am really looking into applying to jobs. And one it's very scary for me to talk about this publicly with all of you because you're all here, my coaching business, and it is something that is like such a passion of mine, and I really love it. But I am also a BCBA and I also support families and kids with autism, and that is also a really big passion of mine. And there were certain job opportunities that presented themselves this summer that I was like, I really sat down and thought about it. And it was a different path than I expected. And it was also a different job than I've had before as a BCBA. So it really, in the summer, it really allowed me to sit and really think about, next steps. And I definitely had a lot of imposter syndrome come up because, there was definitely times where I was like, oh, like, could I even really do this? And is this something that, I'm really capable of doing? And a lot of the time we can so easily get in our heads thinking that we're not capable of doing something. And so honestly, as I've, said on my Instagram and in this community here is that like I want this to be a space on my podcast where like we're doing this together. It's a come with me type of atmosphere and I want you guys to understand like I'm human too, right? Like I have these feelings too. I'm not immune to them, right? And it's really I still have these experiences, but it's all about how I respond to them, how you respond to it, and really looking at that perspective shift as you navigate these things. And so this is kind of an episode of just like my evolution that I've allowed myself to really sit and reflect on as I've navigated new situations, different experiences, and challenging things. And so I wanted you to come along the journey with me. So this is a very raw, unfiltered episode. So yeah, let's get into it. One of the things that I really allowed myself to sit and reflect on is thinking about past experiences where I was new at something. So this whole episode is really around feeling like you're new, whether it's a new role, a new job, a new family, a new situation that's really coming up for you, whether you are now like a new mom or you have, um, or you essentially are navigating new situations that could have been unexpected or expected, right? And I really just want to pull the curtain back here and walk through this with you together. So, when I think about myself, 4 years ago, I was working at an agency, so doing behavior therapy with kids with autism. And I was in my master's program to be gaining my experience hours to take my board certification exam to be a behavior analyst. And when I think back to 4 years ago, Sonia, one, I was absolutely terrified of taking that exam. And back then, I hadn't really fully stepped into like my personal healing journey just yet. And so there was a lot of procrastination with studying for my exam. And, really just I was so overwhelmed and so scared. And then, I really just I pushed through and I took that exam, and I remember feeling so defeated after. Like, there's no way I passed that. And it's like thinking back to like these kind of scenarios where it's like it was a very new thing. I didn't know what to expect. And yeah, I had the exam materials to prep for it, but it's like everyone goes through that experience differently. And also, just as a note, like with the exam, they always rotate the variety of sections of specific, like you could have more questions on ethics or more questions on supervision or more questions on the clinical pieces. And it varies literally every single time someone takes the exam. So it felt unpredictable. And the one thing that was in my control was, how much I studied and how much I really looked at the materials. And I did my thing, but I felt terrified. And I think that is ultimately going to be the theme as I share these experiences, like reflecting back on these experiences, is that I chose to do it scared anyway. And so that was November 2018, and I passed the exam, and I was completely shocked. In complete honesty, I, you know, walked out of that feeling terrified. And I found out literally on Christmas Eve that I passed. It took them that long to get back. Um, and so that could have been a Christmas miracle or a Christmas not so great moment, right? So anyway, I passed, but you know, I've shared this previously too. When I've gotten those four letters, the BCBA title, it really made me feel like there was so much more to accomplish, so much more to do. I now have this title that people will look up to, and it felt heavy. And, in that specific field, it's also like, oh, you're a BCBA, you can go do XYZ. But it's like when you're brand new, you're still learning, you still need to gain that experience and hopefully have more supervision and things like that. And at the agency I was at, I did. And it just still felt terrifying. Like, what does this mean going forward? And I still felt so new. And I was like, well, just because I have these four letters behind my name now, it's almost like there's a lot more expectations. And so I felt new and I felt scared and unsure really of like, what does it mean? And where am I going to go from here? And that was a moment where I was like really tapping into understanding my perspective in that situation. And actually, let me backtrack. Before I did that exam, I applied for a clinical supervisor position at my agency. And that experience in itself was probably, once again, something that I felt like I was not qualified for, and that I was terrified. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try anyway. And it's so interesting because I applied for that position not once, not twice, but 3 times. And on the third time, I got the job. And I really just want to normalize this. And once again, I am also quite scared sharing this publicly with everybody. But it's my real honest truth. And something that was so powerful during those interview experiences was that the first time I felt like I had like fake confidence. I don't know what you would call it, but it was like fake it till you make it kind of feeling. And I was like, I'm going to say all the things in this interview. And, I'm not going to say I don't know or anything like that. Like, I'm going to give an answer. And I went in like guns a blazing kind of thing, and I felt, oddly enough, I felt good after it. And then I didn't get the job. And the second time around, it was only a few months later. And so there wasn't like a formal first interview, but there was like a second interview process that was more like hands on. Um, and once again, I felt okay during that one and then didn't get it. And then 6 months later, there was another position that came available. And at that point, it was like, through that process, so I ended up getting a lead position after the second time. And so I did get a promotion, but it wasn't to the clinical supervisor role. And so in the summertime, like when that happened in 2017, that was really when I was like, you know what? I'm gaining experience. I'm gaining experience. And it was new and it was terrifying. But every time I went into those scenarios, I was like, I'm learning more about myself. And this kind of goes into the growth versus fixed mindset, where like when you have a fixed mindset, it's a one track mind. It's very much all or nothing, black and white. And also, you feel as if you can't expand or learn. Like you feel as though you have certain qualities and you can't change them. That is a fixed mindset where you're like, well, I'm not capable of doing this, so I'm not even going to bother to try. And you believe that the skills that you have and the knowledge and experience and your past conditioning and all the things that you have grown up with, that you've carried, you feel that that is all you and that you can't change that. That is, in essence, a fixed mindset. And versus a growth mindset where you see the adversities, you see your struggles, and you understand that, yeah, it's hard and it can be challenging, but you see that silver lining and you see these challenges as opportunities. You see these challenges as moments to lean into and understand yourself better. And that it's not a, oh, I did this good, bad, right, wrong, that all or nothing black and white thinking. It's more about, I did it to the best of my ability in this moment. And I'm going to learn from it to know how I can improve and move forward. And something that I realized in this process was that I really did believe in myself in those moments, which is really cool to look back on and be like, wow, like I saw those moments as like, okay, I'm learning. And like maybe it wasn't the right timing. And, you know, I'm still going to continue to grow and understand myself. And in that time, I then got a lead position and I was taking on more responsibilities and I actually loved it. I was taking on more and supporting more and it was like a stepping stone. And so it was interesting for me to look at it in that way to be like, yeah, I could have looked at those two interview processes as failures, or I could have looked at those opportunities as situations to understand myself better and where I can gain more experience and confidence too, like in my true experiences, right? And so fast forward to December 2017, and I did the third interview. And what's so wild about this whole experience is that I went into that interview with like a I don't give a crap attitude. Like I was like, I'm going to say what's on my mind. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say if I don't know something, like I'm just going to go into this interview as myself. And once again, it was a privilege, the fact that it was like an internal situation, like it was all at the agency I was working at. Um, so they knew me, and I think that's why I had that version of myself there of like being like, I'm just going to say what's on my heart and what works, you know. And I went into that interview, and there were questions that I said I don't know, or can you repeat that, or can you, you know, elaborate on what you mean by that. And I was just really honest, and I got the job that time. And I remember my boss sitting me down, and she was like, when she told me I got the job, and she looked at me and she's like, I have to be honest. From your first interview to this third one, your confidence was like day and night. And it's kind of wild to think back to that moment and be like, wow, in that first interview, I was like, I'm going to do all the things, say all the things. And that was very much coming from like an egotistic mindset of like, I'm just going to say all the things that I know. And versus the third one, I was like, I'm just going to speak my truth and share what I genuinely know and be honest about what I don't know. And it was just such an eye opening moment for me of being like, wow, when I be more myself, it is, you know, it actually really does allow deeper layers of growth and healing. And so I'm sharing all of these experiences in just full transparency because I'm continuing to grow and learn about myself. And so, as I shared in the beginning, I have gone through interview processes recently again, because there's certain priorities in my life that I'll probably share at some point that are just, you know, my priorities have shifted recently. And I am feeling really excited and passionate about leaning into that work again and potentially going back to a full-time job. And once again, it feels scary to say this out loud to you, but it's like that is my truth right now. And that's what feels beautiful for me right now in my season. And I'm excited about it. So the fact that I'm putting this out there right now to you guys is I'm speaking it and I'm allowing myself to speak it. And that in itself is huge. So kudos to me right now in this moment. I'm just gonna like pat myself on the back right now because this is scary and that's okay. But I'm so excited. And so I did an interview in the summer, and the experience of that interview was really powerful as well. I felt comfortable and honest, and I got the position, but it looked different than I intended. So I didn't end up taking it. And that was also something I've never experienced either, where I had the opportunity to actually turn something down, which felt so new and different. And every time I went into these new things, I was scared. And that one was something that I still felt somewhat comfortable with because it was agency based. And what I'm about to share is that I did an interview recently, and it's with the school board. And I haven't worked in the school board before as a BCBA, supporting kids in the school. And that felt one very terrifying, but something I am so passionate and excited about. Like, I want to be in there supporting educators, supporting teachers, the staff, the kids on a larger scale. Like, that just like fills my cup so much just thinking about it on that larger scale. But the thing is, it's something that is very new to my brain and to me, and I haven't worked in a school before. And it's my first time. And so doing an interview for the school board was so different. And I felt that like ego confident version of me come out and want to answer all the questions right and perfect. And that's what happened. And I am being so transparent right now because this interview just happened, so I don't even know what's gonna come of it. Um, but I am just sharing my raw and honest feelings about this experience because it is so new to me, and I have imposter syndrome coming back up again, and I have these feelings of like, "Oh my god, I totally bombed that interview, and I can't believe I said these things." And it's like, this is where that growth versus fixed mindset comes in. Like, I am able to look at this situation and be like, I am putting my beginner hat back on right now. Yes, I have so many years of experience as a BCBA and supporting so many students in so many different ways, but this is a new avenue. So for me, I was like, my brain was just like, red flags, red flags. You don't know about any of this stuff, right? And it's like, I could have made that mean something about me, about my skills, about my capabilities. And that is where I let that thought stop, right? And I looked and I was like, is that really helpful? And, this is one of the core things when it comes to supporting ourselves is really building that cognitive flexibility with your thought process, building a relationship with your mind. And, within ACT, this is a whole component of yourself as context process, understanding that you can be the observer self and acknowledge these thoughts and see them. And well, as I always say, like, I'm not immune to it. So it's like, of course I'm going to have these feelings, but it's like, how do I choose to respond to it? And I feel like me sharing this episode to you all is healing in itself for me. So, one, thank you for being here and listening to my stories and just being a part of this community. And yeah, I just feel so raw and open right now, but it also feels so beautiful. And so, all of this I'm trying to say is that if you are in a new phase in your life, if you have growing pains, where like you are just feeling these new things evolving and it's scary. And you're like, oh my gosh, can I even sustain this? Or can I even move through this? Or what if something goes wrong? All those questions that come up, just know that it is okay and so normal as a human. Like, that is so natural for you to feel that way and for that to come up. And I'm going through and navigating these things always. We all have different seasons of life where we ebb and flow, and I'm feeling like a beginner again in different ways, and that's okay. And I think that's the beautiful thing, especially when it comes to our healing journey, investing in yourself for the first time, like allowing yourself to step into this like scary space, walking that edge of your comfort zone and being like, oh, like, can I do it? It feels so different, but I don't know. And that was something, I mean, I haven't even touched on my experience as an entrepreneur these past 2 years. That was literally me every day. I felt new to every single thing as an entrepreneur. Every day, week, month, something new kept coming up. And if you are, if you're an entrepreneur, you feel this in your bones. But if you are not an entrepreneur, it's so wild that I didn't think about the spiritual experience that you get running your own business, being your own boss, having to make every single decision yourself to gain that income and, you know, being able to support yourself by yourself is absolutely the most terrifying thing and one of the things that will catapult you through. a spiritual awakening, your personal development journey tenfold so quickly. And that is something that I feel like I can totally talk about on another episode. But it's like these past 2 years, when I think about, my job experience, my interview experience, learning and growing and building more knowledge and certifications and understanding things has I have allowed myself to continue to tap into my trust in myself, my inner knowing. And some days I don't trust it. And sometimes it feels too scary. And I take that step back. And sometimes we need to allow ourselves to slow down to speed up. And I know that sounds super like counterintuitive, but that's those moments where it's like rather than focusing and overthinking and overanalyzing about one specific situation, if you're feeling that, especially with something new in your life, pause and take a step back and allow yourself to look at the bigger picture in those moments, because these micro moments are temporary and fleeting. So, something that I might feel about one specific situation today, I always ask myself, like, is this going to be something that is like important and going to affect me, in a week, in a month? Is it something that is always going to be there? And if it's not, which majority of the time, it's something that is fleeting over a small period of time, that's where we got to shift our focus, is leaning into that and saying, okay, bigger picture moment here. My vision is I am striving for this new thing and I'm so excited for it. And this is one step towards that. And sometimes we put so much weight on every single little step that we end up feeling disappointed in the end. And that's when we place a lot of expectations on every outcome. And that's when we get lost in that fixed mentality where we're like, well, I believe that this is going to happen. And if it doesn't, then like hands up in the air, I'm done, you know? And that's not the case. Every single experience you go through is something to learn from, understand yourself better, and move better through life. And that's something I'm always navigating. We're all always navigating. So, to end this episode, I want to speak to Brene Brown because I friggin' love her and she's the absolute best and so friggin' amazing. So she has something called fucking first times, her FFTs. And what I loved about this is that she talks about the fact that even though, she's been doing research on shame and vulnerability for over 20 years, and that is, you know, not to say her comfort zone, but that is very much where she is an expert. But then she started a podcast and she was saying how hard it was and how challenging it was to be learning something new. And so she talked all about, fucking first times. Like we're all going to navigate that in our life. It's not like we're going to be perfect and know everything right out the gate when we're navigating change, when we're wanting to do something different. Of course we're going to be new at it. And that also ties into daily habits, right? Like if you want to start a new routine, you're going to be a beginner at it. You're going to not know everything. And that's what life is, an experiment. Being able to look at it from that lens and be like, okay, what can I play around with today that's going to really like help me? If you're thinking about habits, like something isn't sticking, you don't really feel good about it. Okay. Doesn't mean you're wrong or that it means anything about who you are as a person. It just means let's have some more room of flexibility. Let's have more play. Let's have more experimenting. Let's switch up when I do the habit or how I do the habit or making it even smaller to see how it feels. Like that's thinking about this on a day to day perspective. But when you think about, having an interview or taking that big leap into a new job or, moving into a new home, new city, or deciding to invest in yourself, taking that first leap in anything is scary and nerve-wracking, but at the same time, if you feel that way, that means you care about it. that means that you are excited deep down underneath that fear that is the blanket. Underneath that is at your core what you truly desire and those passions. And when you uncloak that fear, take that blanket off and you allow yourself to shed that, and it comes back from time to time. There's layers to that. But when you allow yourself to be you in that moment and say, I'm going to choose me to show up for me and do this for myself in this moment, that is ultimately where beautiful things happen. Growth does not happen in your comfort zone. Change does not happen in your comfort zone. If you are feeling stuck and you're just like, ugh, like I am feeling as though I am so frustrated with myself. I keep self-sabotaging. Like I'm in my head all the time. I don't know what I'm like. If you are wrapped up in all of that, that's okay and normal. But allow yourself to look at that and say, from a growth perspective, doing the same thing and expecting different results is where we have that conflict of being like, I'll continue to do this and hope for the best. And when you do that, that is creating hopelessness. That is creating a space where you're actively saying out loud that you're just putting it into the universe without taking any of that implementation and action to move yourself there. So before I did my whole, journey of like really diving into personal development, I was so stuck. I was so mad at myself, but I was doing the same things. And even though I didn't admit it or say it out loud, I was expecting different results. Like I was expecting things to change without me actually doing the change, like doing the different things. And so honestly, I don't even know at the end of this interview, at the end of this podcast episode, I feel like I just spilled my raw and honest guts to you. And the theme of this was really about if you're feeling new about something, I get it. I'm right there with you. I'm in a season of transition right now. And once again, if you've listened to all of this episode, I love you. You are my people. And we're going through this together. And I'm in a season of transition where I'm navigating new and exciting things, but they feel so scary. So, really allowing yourself to tap into what feeling do I want to embody as I navigate this? I don't want to embody being scared. I want to really tap into the passion that is underneath that layer, that blanket of fear, and allowing myself to take those little steps there. And whatever happens, happens. Honestly, a mantra that I used during my wedding in the summer was, it is what it is. And I feel like that has truly been resonating a lot, is that it is what it is. If I am going to sit here and place so much meaning on every little thing that happens, I'm going to dwell, I'm going to feel a lot more resentment and disappointment and frustration. And I don't want to breed that in my life. And I don't want to create heavier shame about the fact that I have been taking these chances. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to grow and learn about myself. And it is so scary. But like, thank you so much for all of you coming along the ride. I will definitely keep you guys posted in the sense of what really comes through with all of this for me. But I just wanted to be so transparent because I have felt like I've been in a transition phase since July. And now this episode is October 10th. And I've just been navigating that. And it's felt very new for me. And I am putting my beginner hat on to say, let's do this. Let's learn as we go, because that is where the change and growth is going to happen. And yeah, I am so happy that you guys are along the ride. And I just want to say, like, right now I have my group program coming out, and like this is honestly one of the biggest components of it. If you are feeling like you're stuck and you're like, I want to make changes, I just don't know how, join Redefine to Realign. This group program allows you to really understand yourself, where these certain beliefs and thought patterns come from, and how to shed old patterns and let them go and have more ease in your life and build that confidence over trusting yourself through taking action. And I'm just so excited. We literally start this program this week. So I'm leaving it open until the end of this week. So, like, by all means, reach out to me if you have any questions. The link will be in my bio on Instagram. But we tackle all of this together. And I'm just so excited for the women that have already said yes to themselves and they've taken that leap to learn and grow. And we're all going to do it together. And I just love that we have messaging support to like cheer each other on and work through it together, and really just getting in the room to move through that and know you're not alone. So that's my message for this very long winded podcast episode. Oh, okay. I think that's everything I wanted to share. And you know what? This was probably the most imperfect, on the fly podcast episode to date, that I'm just like, whew. In itself, I feel like I've honestly shed a lot just in this episode. And that's the thing. When I started to figure out like having a podcast, I was like, what does that mean? I have no idea what I'm doing. This is terrifying. But I got in the room with people that have done it before. I signed up for a 4-week podcast program, and it was honestly the fire under my booty I didn't realize I needed. And the support along with it just helped me feel like I wasn't a beginner as much as I thought I was. And I had so much more confidence going into it. So get yourself in the rooms with people that have been there, like support yourself in being like, how can I grow? It is terrifying, but like, can I reach out to people? Can I get a part of into communities? And that was the thing too. I reached out to a BCBA that is in the school board and I asked her all these questions, like, and it's like I allowed myself to not let the fear take over and keep me small and, just kind of dwell and stick to myself. I said, I want this experience. I want to learn more. And as silly as I felt, even just like reaching out to certain people, it didn't feel silly when the support and the connections I received just by doing that and saying yes to doing that was like tenfold. I now have so many more connections with people that I wasn't even intending or expecting. So allow yourself to get in the room with people that have gone through it before, but also know that if you're feeling like a beginner in any area in your life, you're going to go through those seasons throughout your whole life, not just now. Heck, I could want to start like a third or fourth business 10 years from now. Who knows? Right? Like there's so many things that, and I'm letting myself be open to the possibilities. And I will end on that because now we're at like the 40-minute mark. And I love you all so much. Thank you for sticking around. If any of this episode resonates with you, please shoot me a DM. Like, I love you guys so much. And I love hearing your stories and what resonates and like building those connections. Like, my deepest value is connection, like deep connection. And that is why I essentially created this podcast so I could have these intimate conversations with you all. So, if you feel called, if any of this resonates, shoot me a DM on Instagram. Let's have a conversation. And yeah, okay. I'm going to stop rambling. This feels like a long voice note that I typically send my biz besties. So you guys are getting this raw and honest episode of my story time of my journey that I am always ever evolving on. And for the millionth time, thank you for all being here. And I hope you all have an amazing week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.